Before I talk about what plugins to get in your second year of music production, if you made it through your first year, let me say congrats. Hello fellow producer, this is Onesto and I make tutorials that motivate you to create. In this video, we're going to go over plugins that I wish I would have only bought and stuck with in my second year of music production. My biggest mistake is that I tried to buy as many plugins as I could, as fast as I could. Do not try to be like me. So this list is based on lessons from my own experience along with some wisdom from other blog posts. And as a heads up, I'm not going to be demonstrating each of these plugins on their own because then it would be the longest video ever. Instead, I'm going to be giving you a quick rundown of the plugins I recommend for your second year. If you want to know what plugins to focus on for your first year of music production, just click the link here. Before we begin, a few caveats. These plugins are just recommendations. You can totally disagree with me, or you can agree with me. This isn't a buy these or fail kind of list. You can still make really amazing tracks with just stock plugins. I'm just trying to help. And finally, I stand by these recommendations and believe that following this video can help make your second year a lot easier than it was for me. All right, let's talk about these plugins. Here's a rule I wish I would have stuck with. In your first year, I recommend that you just buy one synth and stick with it. In your second year, make sure you own 2 of these synths and pick one of these sample libraries, also called Romplers. For synths, I still recommend Serum if you somehow didn't get it in your first year. Pick Inspiratura is a underrated and really it's kind of like the underdog compared to Serum. These 2 synths are very visual, which I found very valuable to understand why sounds sound the way they do. And then challenge yourself by getting one synth that is less visual, like Sylenth or Zone. The cool thing is that if you can master these 2 kinds of visual and not as visual synths, then you can pretty much pick up any synth plugin and just know how to roll with it. When it comes to sample libraries, I'm the biggest fan of Output. In particular, their XL library, which is like a big giant vocal library, Signal, which is a contact library focused on rhythm, or Substance, which is all about bass, and I think those are great places to start. I'm also a huge fan of Spitfire Audio. Their stuff is very expensive and more geared towards scoring trailers and films, soundtracks, but that also means that their libraries are really super pro. I would actually recommend buying some of their original libraries, first because they're really cheap at $30, and it gives you an idea what they're all about before you drop a whole lot of cash. Another wildly popular Rompler is Omnisphere. I don't own it mostly because it's pretty pricey, but it's an industry standard, and all my friends who have it, they love it. They swear by it. That's all they use. So yeah, that's another very good recommendation. Regardless of what you get, the goal of your second year is to be as comfortable with the instruments that you commit to. You'll benefit so much more by knowing 2 or 3 instruments inside and out versus knowing 6+ synths skin deep. And this is coming from experience. Don't be an idiot like me, please. All right, EQs. In the first year, I recommended just using your stock EQs and learning everything you can about subtractive and additive EQ. Because honestly, building your EQ skills is so much more important than having the best EQ plugin. So please build those skills. But once you get a foundation, the one EQ you should get is FabFilter Pro Q3. This is the EQ to rule them all. I personally think it's the only EQ you'll ever need. Now, it is expensive, so if budget is an issue, wait until a FabFilter runs a sale and you'll be able to save a good amount of money. And whether you choose to get this EQ or not, in year 2, learn all you can about dynamic EQ and mid-side EQ, which you can easily use and access in Pro Q3. Saturation and distortion. In year 2, you should be using saturation and distortion in a very basic and fundamental way. But in your second year, I would check out 2 of these plugins. Once again, Decapitator, this is the simplest and most straightforward saturation distortion plugin there is. It's just a solid plugin. And if you want an easy to use saturation plugin, this is it. But if you want a plugin that's more robust and has a lot more flexibility, then get FabFilter's Saturn 2. This is a very, very good plugin. With it, you can get the subtlest amounts of saturation all the way to extreme forms of distortion. And there's even some modulation and crazy creative possibilities within this plugin. The third plugin I want to mention is Trash 2 from Isotope. I'm sure you can do subtle stuff with this plugin, but honestly, this plugin is all about distortion. It has a lot of presets that allows you to get all kinds of distorted and extreme tones. So for your second year, I recommend getting 2 of these distortion plugins and understanding them as best as you can. Let's move on to dynamics and compression. You can hate me for saying this, but I need to mention it again that what's more important than owning a great compressor is knowing what compression is and how to apply it. I still want to list out what I recommended for year 1 because they're still great for year 2. So your stock compressor, OTT, those are really good starts, along with some finisher plugins like Lux and Fresh Air. The other compressor you should check out is FabFilter's C2. It's a great compressor that is just really visual. It offers plenty of compressor models and has some great sidechain capabilities. Because this fat filter is going to be excellent, but it's also going to be expensive. So once again, just wait for a sale if budget is an issue. And before I share what effects plugins you should get, if this video is giving you a good idea what to buy and focus on for your second year, let me know by liking this video. And I'm curious, could you tell me in the comments below what you're looking forward to most about your second year in music production? Let everyone watching this video know we would love to just hear from you and just offer some words of encouragement in return. Cool, now it's time for effects. I love recommending effects plugins because they're usually the most fun to play with. First is RC20. RC stands for retro color, so it's going to focus on giving you that retro, vintage, lo-fi character. This is sort of an effects suite because it offers a little bit of everything when it comes to effects. It has pitch modulation with some wow and flutter. It has like a distortion kind of modeling thing, some reverb, and a few other effects. And it's solid. I think it's great for someone in their second year to start experimenting with adding different kinds of characters to their sounds. The next is Decimort 2, which is a bit crusher. And bit crushing is a low resolution digital distortion effect. It pretty much just adds lots of aliasing to your sounds, almost like it's coming from an old video game. Depending on the type of music you create, you may or may not be really interested in this one. To finish off effects, I still want to bring up delay and reverb. For delay, get Echo Boy, stick with it if you haven't already. And then for reverb, grab 1 or 2 plugins from Valhalla. I recommend checking out their Room, Vintage, or Shimmer reverbs. Now we're on to bundles, subscriptions, and suites. There's a couple of subscriptions that I recommend checking out, which is Splice and Arcade from Output. Splice is a subscription service where you pay a low fee that allows you to download samples across a gigantic library of sample packs. I've been using Splice for a couple of years and it's wonderful. The sample packs they offer are solid. A lot of times they're coming from some of my favorite producers. And you can also download presets from Splice or MIDI files. I consider it an essential subscription for nearly all producers. Another subscription I've been finding more and more value in is Arcade from Output. I'm not going to lie, it took me a long time to figure out how to have fun with this and how to just use it well. It's like part instrument, part sample libraries, and it just feels like a brand new and exciting way to write music. I think of Arcade as like curated sound kits that you can play with your MIDI keyboard. They're broken up into a bunch of great categories that you choose from. I'm even starting to hear Arcade being used in songs for my favorite producers, which is pretty exciting. So don't sleep on this one. Output, they offer a trial if you want to just like check them out that way. I mentioned this one in the last video and I have to mention it again, and that's Sound Toys bundle. It covers a bunch of solid plugins to use, most notably Decapitator and Echo Boy. And the last bundle I want to mention is Native Instruments Complete 13 Collection. So Native Instruments are a company that makes some pretty amazing software and hardware. Their Complete Collection is a huge bundle of effects and instruments. If you're interested, I recommend a couple of things. Firstly, I would only consider buying their Complete Select or Complete package. I would ignore their Ultimate Collection because I think it's way too many plugins and effects for a beginner. Secondly, if you want a discount on the Complete Collection and you also need a MIDI keyboard, then I would buy one of Native Instruments keyboards because then you can get the Complete Select for free, or you can even get the Complete Collection at a discounted price. Another thing to know is that if you get this collection, you're going to be getting a lot of products. So don't feel pressured to learn how to use every single one of them. I made this mistake of thinking that I need to know how to use as many of the Native Instrument plugins as possible, which is just not a good idea. Try them all out, but only really dig into the ones that make sense for the music you want to make and just whatever sticks with you. All right, those are the plugins that I recommend getting during your second year in music production. Before we end, I want to give anyone who's watching in their second year in music production, I want to give like a producer pep talk. So check this out. I feel like when in your second year, I think you're still really excited. You're still just happy about like learning music production day in and day out. You still have that wonderful, fantastic drive. But you might start wondering like, when am I going to start getting really good at this stuff? Because I remember when I would like learn something new, I felt like I kind of climbed a small mountain, and then I like got to the peak only to find another mountain right in front of me to climb. It might feel like that for a while. That's normal, that's fine, that's okay. Doesn't mean you're bad or not talented or whatever. It just means music production is hard. So keep that in mind as you have days where you're frustrated. And also keep that in mind when you have days that are just filled with joy and excitement. All right, so if you want to learn more about plugins, just click one of the videos here. And don't forget to subscribe so we can hang out again and talk more about music production. Hope we can see you again later.